let's say you get to that point in your tech career where you want to future-proof yourself by learning a little bit of the Linux command line and the Vim text editor. Here we are in Windows 10. It's a very stripped down Windows 10, but you could start in any Windows 10 or Windows 11 for that matter. It's all pretty much the same when it comes to installing the Windows subsystem for Linux, which is what we're going to do with my special installer script that sets up Jupyter Lab running from Linux side, which provides a wonderful transition strategy. So first we bring up Microsoft Edge. And before I even pull up my script, I'm going to minimize that for a second and do two pieces of preparatory work. So the first is with File Explorer. And in File Explorer, what you want to do is go into View, Options. You go to the View tab, and here it says Hide Extensions from Known File Types. You want to unselect that and hit Apply because of something we're going to be doing shortly that's going to require a file rename. The other thing actually is I'm going to go to the Microsoft Store. And I'm going to type in terminal, because this demonstration is much prettier if I have Windows Terminal on the machine. So you just get Windows Terminal. So far all I've really done was I've done a PC reset to get a nice clean Windows 10. I did a bunch of deletion of apps and cleaning up of the start bar and stuff just to get this pristine environment. Then I went into File Explorer, allowed it to show file types, and then I installed Terminal from the Microsoft Store. Now we go into Edge. We go to mykoz.ai. It's a site where I'm doing my little endeavor here. It's a special installer script for Windows subsystem for Linux. And so we just copy this text here, and then we create a new text document. I do select all, and I call it mykoz.bat. Notice we're giving it a .bat extension. It makes us confirm. We confirm it. You see the little gears, and that's how you know that's done correctly. And then I go into Edit, and I paste that text I just got from the website. I save it and close. And now when I click that, it's going to actually fetch the installer script for this WSL installer, and you'll see the reason why I'm not using screen capture software. WSL is not installed. Do you want to install it now? Blah, 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 blah. So you just let it install. Makes you confirm twice. It's going to do another one of those in a moment. And so now it's installing the Windows subsystem for Linux. This is a necessary step in running Linux under Windows, doing it well. There's actually two versions of this, WSL and WSL2, but everyone seems to be moving to WSL2. It has all kinds of advantages, and it does require a reboot. It's activating a feature on your system called the hypervisor, which allows Linux to run not in a multi-boot system, but side by side with Windows. So it just basically gives you a bash shell, a Linux terminal from inside of Windows. It doesn't even feel like you're running multiple operating systems, quite frankly. It's a very elegant integration, and anyone who is worried about their technical capabilities, keeping them timeless, should do this. And you can see here, it's just telling you it's now time to do a reboot and to come back and run the script after the second part of this reboot is complete. So we're going to go ahead and restart. And it's going to do a little bit of, stuff on this restart because it's doing a little bit of a system upgrade because the hypervisor was turned on. Hello, it just went to the black screen with the Windows logo. Let's see how quickly it comes back. There you can see like upgrade stuff is actually going on there. And here we are back. Now, I'm not going to touch anything, you can see. And if all the magic happens correctly, a window should just pop up to do the second part of the WSL install. There it goes. It says launching Ubuntu. Initial installing. This may take a few minutes, and indeed it does. Okay, it's back from that, and you can see I got impatient and hit the key a few times, but anyway, it's asking for a username, so I'm just going to give it the very traditional Ubuntu username. And it doesn't really matter because we're going to be wiping out this instance of Ubuntu with my install script. I'm going to give it the password foo. It asks for it again, and so now Ubuntu is installed successfully. So you need to allow it to go through this little rigmarole here. Even though we're about to replace it, you can see a little Ubuntu prompt here. And all this text is so small and there's no tabs up here. And that's all because this is in an old-fashioned command prompt window. And so what we're going to do to make the second run of my script, because the first run triggered the whole WSL install action that you just saw in the reboot, and now WSL is on the system under hypervisor. But what I'm going to do is go into terminal once, and if I recall correctly here, it says we can set this as the default application for our terminal. So we'll open settings and we'll tell it our default app is going to be Ubuntu. I think it's this bottom one. You got two Ubuntus here already, but I do believe it's this bottom one. And the default terminal application, we are going to set that to Windows Terminal, and that's going to make the next run of that a bit prettier. We hit save, we close out of that, close all tabs, that's fine. Now we click this, and my script runs, and I can do Control Plus to make a nice big appearance of it. And you can read about my version of the WSL that I'm installing. I'm just putting a different Ubuntu 22.04 on here and chase the rabbit to Linux. There are many paths in life that will lead to dead ends. This isn't one. By installing the Linux version of Jupyter Lab on Windows, you are running the same code on your computer as you can on all Linux servers. From there, you ease your way into a lifetime of mindfulness and timeless skills by keeping a one text file journal in Vim for the rest of your life. And I'll show you that shortly. And it steps you through a few different screens because I want to make sure you really want to do this, because if it's someone who's using their Ubuntu 22.04, they need to know I'm replacing it. They also need to know more of the context of what's going on. As we live, we are always getting closer to the end of our lives, and there's precious little time to get sidetracked by short-lived trends and superficial tools. Marcus Aurelius gave us Stoicism, a philosophy for finding meaning and resilience in a chaotic world. MyCause.ai, MyCause Real OS, offers Toitism, a modern approach to finding value in life by focusing on mastering a few simple, lasting skills that can be carried with us from one context to the next. So we're going to be accessing a lot of our Linux stuff through a web browser to the little Linux system that's running here. What, no Docker? And yeah, you can run the cloud versions of things like Python every bit as well on Windows as you can as if you were using cloud services and paying people for stuff. So the third screen. How in the world can Stoicism apply to tech? Well, it shows you this little idea that you can take it with you to Macs, PCs, or really anything far into the future and it still is relevant. AI, no problem. This is exactly the tech that's used to control AI systems. They all boot from this. You interact with their APIs through this sort of tech. So we'll go to the last screen. I give you a little bit of words about, the other routes you could take. Look, you could be using VS Code and be doing everything exactly the same way as everyone else, beholden to a vendor's vision of what your future should be. What I propose here is in opposition to the status quo, and it is going to be a lot of work. But the approach I propose is elegant, clever, and simple. Merely by making your Jupyter Lab powered by actual Linux coming from the Microsoft subsystem for Linux, you will be able to do things that few others can, specifically going from that attended push button style automation to a real automation. Following that, we'll get you into Linux terminal and a Vim text editor and daily journaling. So yada yada, last chance to not do it. Here we go. Click it. And it's installing Ubuntu 22.04, Python 3.11. And please have patience. If you haven't read the opening chapter to Alice's Adventures in Wonderland, this would be a good time to do so because this is going to take about 10 minutes. Hold tight. I'm updating Ubuntu, which takes a moment. I'll start typing to you again when it gets good. This is probably the longest part of the install because what it just did is it installed Ubuntu, and now it's now doing what Linux people would know as the sudo apt update and sudo apt upgrade to update its free software repository. And, it's like doing a Windows update after a fresh install. So this is the equivalent to that. And as soon as that's done, it will get on to the Python portion of the install, currently set to Python 3.11. 3.12 is actually in pre-release. It's at release candidate 1, and I'm just not using that just yet because it's not compatible with some of the must-install stuff like pandas right now. So I'm using the highest version of 3.11 that I can, and as soon as 3.12 is available, I will be switching over to that. You can see that install is just starting to occur here. And it says if you ever had difficulty getting the latest Python or controlling which version you're using, just rerun this script and it'll upgrade it to the latest. And you're using the genuine Linux Python running on cloud servers. So no more DOS backslashes or pathing issues. It's just Python the way it's meant to be. What you write is cloud ready, we could call it. Here it goes on to the apt installs. So it had actually installed Python, specifically and separately from the OS. Almost all Linux distros do install Python, but I install it separately in order to get the latest and greatest. And now this is the apt installs. It's using Ubuntu's Debian package manager to grab a handful of things. Mainly I'm installing NeoVim and Google Chrome so we can do a bunch of cool stuff. Part of the purpose of this is to bring you along to journaling, and we could do the journaling in just Vim, but NeoVim does allow a AI copilot named Copilot. So it can help you write, it can help you code, whatever. So I like to have NeoVim available, which is basically identical to Vim, except it has some enhanced support for this AI stuff. And then Chrome is really there so that we can do authentication when we're doing dev work and it requires OAuth 2 authentication and a browser needs to pop up for a moment. This allows that to occur. In addition, we can do some browser automation. So if you ever want to do something against a product that doesn't offer an API, or you don't want to spend the money for the API, you can just automate against the web user interface, and it can run what we call headlessly. So you don't have to see the browser pop up. Once you have it running properly, you put it into headless mode, and it can just be running invisibly in the background doing stuff for you. This next phase is the pip install. So there's a bunch of different things out there that are like web stores. The apt-get that had just occurred. Now this is the pip installs. There's over 300,000 packages there in what we call the Python Packaging Index, or PyPI, P-Y-P-I. And it's what gets hit when you do pip install under Python. So I'm grabbing a few things there, good ones for machine learning and stuff. Mainly pandas is getting installed at this point. The bare minimum really for data science and machine learning and AI. You can always pip install more stuff later. Now I actually do Node.js. It's also for the browser automation. It's unfortunate because everything I'm teaching here is the opposite of Node.js, but it needs to be there for certain automation things. And then finally, Jupyter Lab, the main point of this, one of the two main points. It's partially learning Python through the web browser, a real Linux version of Python through the web browser. And then the other part is learning Vim or NeoVim through the Linux terminal. And there you have it. It's installed. And we can just close this window now. And what's different? Well, for starters, if we clicked this one here, we do have to tell it it's the internet browser we want to use, just because I installed this system so recently. And you can see it gets this nifty icon once it knows it's a web thing. And in a bunch of places I've told you this password is foo. Sure, I'll tell it to save it. And here is the Linux version of Jupyter Lab. The speed and performance is great. You've got 3 directories: an intro directory, a journal directory, and a your service directory. So if we wanted to go into the intro, I'll go into a thing here called Linux Proof. And there's a bunch of stuff we can run here. I'll make that font bigger so you can see it even here. And we'll import a few libraries. You can see it's running Linux, the versions of Python that are running, and your home directory, home/Ubuntu, what executable is being used. You can see it's a Python executable in a virtual environment. What your file separator is, so you're in the world of forward slashes and not backslashes. And then just some environment variables if you're curious about what's going on, to see things about what you're running. And this is a fun one here because somewhere in there it tells you all the Ubuntu stuff. There you go. You can see we're on Ubuntu 22.04. And so we're legitimately running a Linux version of Python. If you wanted to just see some Python, I would do print hello world. And that's the hello world in Python. And because you're in Jupyter, you could do hello world just as you don't even need the print statement. So we have Jupyter Lab running in a very Linuxy way. And then there's also this little icon here for a Linux shell. If we open that up, you got a little text instruction to see how Jupyter Lab runs invisibly. Type screen ls, and it also tells you how you can get to Jupyter Lab, a reminder of the password. And to begin your Vim or NeoVim experience, type Vim tutor. So I'll get you into the journaling soon, but let's take a look at screen ls. You can see there's 2 things running. This is Jupyter, and this is your service. I'm going to start teaching people how to do their own Linux service from this directory here called your service. There's not much in there right now, but there is in fact a Python script you could look at, and it's just this busy while loop. It imports date, time, and sleep, and while true, print now, right? So if we go back to the terminal and we take a peek at what's going on in your service, screen-reattach your service. There it is. It's just every 5 seconds, I'm just doing a date timestamp. And I'm going to turn that into a screen capture thing, doing a little bit of browser automation, doing a screen capture against whatever site you like, submitting the screen snapshot into a directory on the drive, which you could look at. I'll probably do multiple ones and make it eat its tail so it never fills up the drive. And that can be adapted into all kinds of apps, especially for my field of SEO. And I'll just basically be teaching people how to get around this environment, how to do different things. If you wanted to see Jupyter, we could look at it the same way. When things are running invisibly in the background that you don't understand, well, there's a problem. You should be able to go in there and watch it. And then anything we do in the Jupyter environment, it registers here. So if I were to actually run this here, oh, well, that's not a real notebook. So let's add a notebook in a different directory. Okay, why not? We'll do it in intro. I'll say new notebook. And here we'll do Hello World. And so that's in a file called Untitled. And somewhere in here is it running it, these are the commands going back and forth between Jupyter and the server. So when you work in the browser here, there's really that server thing in the background. And this is just a profoundly better way to use Jupyter and notebooks than cloud-based services like Colab or other ways of installing this like Anaconda, because you're getting the full-fledged local Linux version. So you can install what you want, you can have the context you want, and everything you create is cloud ready and deployable, so long as you follow good practices for that. So there you have it. This is my latest endeavor called MyCause, and I guess the last thing is I'll be teaching you how to do journaling. So let's go into the journal, I believe by, let's see, Vimit. I think I made a command called Vimit. There you go. Oh, I got a little bit to fix here, so I'm still debugging, but it drops you into NeoVim for journaling. So here we are in NeoVim. If I go deliberately into the journal repo and I go, oh yeah, I just got to put a file in there, journal.md. Yeah, I got a bit to do here to finish the journaling part of it. If I put, let's see, beginning of journal. Yeah, it's not finding my macros. That's what's going on. I have a system here to assist with daily journaling under Vim. So that's what's coming up. Thanks for joining me. Hope to see you soon. Don't forget to subscribe.